Lemokey is the gaming-focused brand from Keychron, and they have a couple different product lines that include budget-friendly options like the P1 Pro that I recently reviewed. This keyboard here is from their more premium-priced L line. This is the L4, a no-nonsense TKL layout with a full aluminum build and a price of $214. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Keychron sent me the L4 for the purpose of reviewing it. I was not paid to make this video, and Lemokey has no input on my review. I will have an affiliate link in the description for you if you're interested in picking up the L4 and you'd like to support this channel. All right, before we get into details of the L4, I just want to point out a difference here compared to the other two keyboards that have been released under the L line of the Lemokey brand. This doesn't really impact the merits of this individual keyboard as a standalone product, but it was a little confusing to me, and hey, this is my channel, so we're going to talk about it. So the confusing thing here is the design features and build components compared to the L1 and L3. Lemokey's parent brand, Keychron, is known for their consistency within product lines. For example, all the keyboards in the VMAX and QMAX line of Keychron keyboards share the same build materials, same internals, same features. They're just different layouts. By establishing the X, P, and L lines under the Lemokey brand, it seemed like they were going to do the same thing. But then we have a curveball here with the L4. The L1 and L3 have some unique features that make them stand out from traditional keyboard layouts. Namely, they both have a column of custom macro keys on the left side of the keyboard. They also both have a unique approach to either a roller or a knob. They both have similar design cues, and the internals are also consistent, both having a foam gasket mount and a polycarbonate plate. And then of course, we have the fact that the L3 is also a TKL layout, so the L line already has this layout accounted for. Now we come to the L4, and we have a very traditional TKL layout and case design. It's very straightforward. There's no row of macro keys, no encoder knob, no roller, and we have different internals. The mount is a silicone bean gasket rather than a foam gasket, and the plate is aluminum rather than polycarbonate. This makes the L4 seem out of place in the product line, and it actually has more in common with the P1 Pro than the L1 and L3. Now, if you're wondering, who cares about this? Maybe nobody but me does, so I'll stop talking about it. I just found it a little odd that they didn't stick to the consistency that Keychron has had in the past. All right, let's get into the features and specs of the L4, and then we'll do our sound test and talk pros and cons. The Lemokey L4 is an 80% or TKL keyboard with 87 keys and an ANSI layout. It is not yet available in an ISO layout, however, Lemokey has released their other keyboards in an ISO layout, so they may do the same with the L4. The construction is CNC machined 6063 aluminum, and there are 3 anodized color options available: carbon black, navy blue, and space silver. The dimensions are 355.8 by 142 millimeters with a front height of 21 millimeters and a rear height of 31 millimeters without the keycaps. The weight is 1,858 grams or 4.1 pounds. The typing angle is 5 degrees and there are no adjustable feet, which is common for keyboards of this type. Connectivity includes Bluetooth for 3 devices with 90 Hz polling, 2.4 GHz with 1000 Hz polling, and USB-C wired also with 1000 Hz polling. There is a physical switch next to the USB port for switching between the connection modes. The battery capacity is 4000 mAh and the estimated battery life is up to 200 hours with all the lights turned off, or up to 100 hours with the backlighting on the lowest setting. Internals include a hot swappable PCB compatible with 3 and 5 pin switches, an aluminum plate, and silicone bean gasket mount. There is foam between the PCB and plate, a switch pad, and 1 layer of foam in the case bottom. The stabilizers are PCB mounted and pre-lubricated. Switch options include Keychron Super Red, Brown, and Banana, which are tactile. The switches are factory lubricated. The keycaps are double-shot PBT with colorways to match the case, and they are not shine-through. Backlighting is full south-facing RGB, and the modes can be controlled with key commands, and there is also an accent light that serves as a battery charging indicator and caps lock indicator. The QMK firmware is compatible with both VIA and the Keychron Launcher web app for remapping and adding macros. There is no pre-programmed mode for Mac users, however there is an unused key map layer that can be programmed for a Mac layout. The L4 is available from Keychron and Lemokey websites for a price of $214 US, and there is also a barebones version available for $194, which does not include the switches and keycaps. All right, now let's get into the pros and cons for the L4. For the pros, let's start with the construction. It is very nice. You would expect great build quality at this price point, but regardless, it definitely feels high quality. It's on par with the Q Max line from Keychron, but actually has a smoother anodized finish to it. I don't have any complaints about the construction whatsoever. The next pro is the connectivity. You've got 3 Bluetooth connections, 2.4 gigahertz with 1000 hertz polling rate, and wired with the same high polling rate, so it's definitely fine for gaming use, which is good because this is their gaming brand. I also appreciate the magnetic storage spot on the bottom of the case for the 2.4 gigahertz receiver, something that I wish more keyboards had so you don't lose the receiver if you're not using it. Next up, let's talk about the switches. Mine came with Keychron Super Red switches. I also had these switches in the P1 Pro, and again, they feel good here. The lubing on them is pretty good. They don't feel scratchy. There's a tiny bit of inconsistency from one switch to the next, but in general, pretty good for a factory lube. And none of them are contributing spring ping, that pingy sound, which is good because when you have an aluminum plate and an aluminum case, it really can conduct a pingy sound and let it resonate. That would be a problem if these were pingy switches, but thankfully they are not. The keycaps are also nice. There's nothing super unique here. We have cherry profile in a colorway that matches the case well. They're double shot and the legends are very crisp and consistent. The double shot is a full layer and overall they feel good. The only minor thing here is that they feel just a little bit smoother than the Keychron's PBT keycaps normally do. Usually they have a little bit more of that PBT texture to them. It doesn't necessarily mean these are bad. It could even just be this particular batch on this keyboard, but overall the quality is still very good. The next pro is the customization. We have 2 options here because the firmware is QMK. You can use VIA to customize the L4, or you can use Keychron's web app, the Launcher tool. If you use Keychron Launcher, you also have the ability to update firmware, and just like VIA, it's a web-based app that works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. I always like to have that kind of consistency, and using Launcher is similar to using VIA when it comes to remapping and creating macros. Now, before we move into the neutral category, where we'll talk about some of the more subjective things, I want to mention a pro about the sound. The sound is good out of the box, and that's a little bit surprising to me. Of course, whether you actually like the sound, that's subjective, but the pro here is that there's no bad ping, there's no really bad hollow sound to it. There's just a touch of that kind of hollow metallic sound that you can get with an aluminum plate and an aluminum case, but it's really not bad. It's pretty good out of the box. If you've ever had one of Keychron's original Q series of keyboards, this is way better in terms of not having negative sounds out of the box. All right, now let's talk about the neutral stuff, things that are either very subjective or don't really fall into a pro or a con. As we usually do, we'll start this category with the design. I personally like it. It's pretty straightforward. There are a few subtle differences from Keychron's prior designs. There's nothing controversial here, and the design is definitely not as unique as the L1 or L3, but design is very subjective, so whether this appeals to you or not is up to your personal taste. Next up, we have the typing feel. The aluminum plate gives it a firm feel, as you would assume, but the silicone bean gasket mount doesn't really add much in the way of flex. There's just a little bit more flex if you remove the foam from the bottom of the case, but in general, it's still a firm overall feel, which is a little more common for a gaming keyboard. Over my 2 weeks of testing it, I actually didn't really have an issue with fatigue after long typing periods, but if you like a soft and flexible feel, this might not be your favorite. There are no alternative plate options you can buy directly from Lemokey at this time, but they do have the plate spec file available to download on their site, so you could have one custom made out of a different material. If you really like this keyboard, you just want a different plate. Next in the neutral category, we have the stabilizers. They are okay. This is probably one of the better installations of Keychron stabilizers I've had out of the box in terms of sound and performance. I've always noticed quite a bit of rattle with Keychron stabilizers out of the box. These are the same PCB mounted stabilizers that you'll find on a lot of other Keychron keyboards. They're definitely not perfect. They still have some wobble to them, and in general, for the best feel and sound, I would personally replace them. Next up is the battery life. This one is neutral because it's not really better than any of the competition, but it's also not really a downside either. Without the backlighting on, the 4000 milliamp hour battery provides up to 200 hours of life, and with the lights on the lowest setting, that drops to 100 hours. That's not bad for keyboards with QMK firmware because it's not the most power efficient firmware out there. For reference, the Newfie Halo 75 V2, a pre-built 75% keyboard with the same battery capacity and same QMK firmware, has a maximum life of up to 300 hours with the lights off and up to 90 hours with the lights on the lowest setting. So the L4 It's not setting any standards, but it's also far from the worst you can get in terms of battery life. Now, another thing in the neutral category is something that some people might be annoyed by and others won't care about at all, and that's the assembly or disassembly. The case screws are on the inside underneath some keycaps, so you've got to remove some keycaps to get to the case screws to disassemble it. They're definitely not impossible to reach, but it's a little bit more annoying than if they were on the outside of the case. If you like to open up your keyboard and experiment with mods, this does not make it faster or easier. But if you don't intend to do any of that, then it won't matter, and the bottom of the case does have a cleaner look without having visible screws. One other minor thing that isn't really a pro or a con is that there is no Mac mode out of the box here. The Lemokey line being marketed as gaming-focused keyboards, they're shipped without a dedicated mode for Mac, like Keychron's keyboards normally have. However, because there are multiple key map layers here, you can easily make your own Mac layer like I did and assign a key command to toggle between a Windows layer and a Mac layer. So simple solution for it, you just kind of have to do it yourself. All right, now let's talk about a couple of cons for the L4. First up, this is something I also said about the P1 Pro. We have south-facing RGB here, south-facing LEDs. Normally, I wouldn't call that a con because having the switches facing south ensures that you don't have any issues with row 3 of cherry profile keycaps hitting part of the switch housing. But this is supposed to be a gaming keyboard, and one thing that is more common on gaming keyboards is the use of shine-through keycaps. Now, the L4 does not come with shine-through keycaps, but if you wanted to use them, south-facing LEDs are not going to provide the best illumination of the legends. You either have to use front-facing side legends or find shine-through keycaps that have legends towards the bottom of the keycap, and that is not easy to find. So in my opinion, because this is a gaming keyboard, it would make more sense to have north-facing backlighting, even if it didn't come with shine-through keycaps. Okay, the next con is that the neat little accent light here doesn't really do anything fun. It's useful because it serves as an indicator light for caps lock and battery level. The top half turns blue when caps lock is on, and the bottom half shows the battery level in red or green when USB is connected, but when it's not performing one of those functions, it's just nothing. There's no ambient effect you can turn on, and that seems a little weird to me, like a miss. There should be some type of ambient mode you can turn it on to. The last con I'll mention also may not matter to everyone, but it's that the L4 does not have any dedicated macro keys or any kind of encoder knob or roller. Normally, I'd put this in the neutral category, but I think this is a con in the space of gaming keyboards. It's at least fairly common for gaming keyboards to give you some extra controls to make things like changing volume or minimizing windows easier and faster. And that's something you can do with the L1 and L3 because they gave you some dedicated macro keys and a knob or roller. But you don't have any of that with the L4, so again, that's a reason why it seems out of place with the rest of the L line, but also I just think it'd be nice to have those things in a gaming keyboard. Again, that may not matter to everybody, but it's something that I would just like to see. So let's consider the L4 overall and the price. For $214, you're getting a very well-built and premium-feeling TKL keyboard with a nice stock sound and a firm typing feel that has good connectivity options and great customization. Now, comparing it to the Keychron Q3 Max, which is the TKL layout in that line, it's the same price, has the same connectivity, same customization, but the Q3 Max has an encoder knob. It has a different mount and plate and different switches. The feel is going to be softer due to the polycarbonate plate and foam gasket mount, and it also comes with super tall KSA profile keycaps. So the Q3 Max is another option if those differences sound more appealing to you. However, if you don't like a firm typing feel, but you do want everything else that we talked about here, I actually just recently reviewed another keyboard that fits all of those things. It's the Evo 80. It's got the premium build, wireless connectivity with 1000 Hz polling, VIA for customization, and a softer typing feel. The disassembly is also super easy for anyone who wants to do some mods, and the price is $170, so it's just a little bit more wallet friendly than the L4. But ultimately, it all comes down to whether the L4 checks all the boxes for you, because none of the cons that I encountered were really huge deal breakers to me. I do recommend checking out the L4 if it sounds like a good fit for your needs, and the price tag isn't a deterrent. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of the L4. Let me know if you picked one up for yourself and how you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech and Gear channel, and while you're here, check out one of these videos. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.